Hello again. Welcome to another episode of Leading from Alignment with our good friend, coach, mentor, and let's just say gentle advisor in the strong ways of the Lord, John Opalewski today. How are you today, John?
Jim, I'm good. Always good to spend time with you. I appreciate your friendship.
Yeah,
I hope you
likewise.
know that.
Yeah,
Um, as I age, friendships just become so much more important
yeah,
than
oh
they
yeah,
were when I was young and crazy.
yeah.
And so thank you for being my friend.
Right on.
Uh,
My pleasure. Thanks for being mine. Yeah. And
yeah.
and we're going to need a friend today because the topic is one of those
So,
things that, man, it's hard to pull the trigger on. If there's one thing harder than pulling the trigger on this, it's not pulling the trigger on this. So
that's
we're going to
right.
need some encouragement if we're going to have courage. So why don't you
Yeah.
introduce our topic for the day?
Sure. The title is called No Mud, No Mess.
Yeah.
Um, Exiting Staff with Grace and Grit. Um, Truth and love,
Yeah.
truth, grace, and truth.
Yeah.
Last week, we explored several ideas around hiring, kind of a playbook for a pastor, for a church. And today, we're going to look at the less exciting part of the people equation, and
Yeah.
that's a church firing playbook of sorts. So,
Yeah.
we're going to walk through a process today that hopefully will help you navigate the departure of a staff member. And,
Yeah.
and I'm just going to be real transparent here. There's no one best way to handle this.
No.
So we're not pitching that our way is the only way here.
Yeah.
Um, I think that there are universal principles, however,
Yes. Yeah.
that are worthy of consideration. And I think that's what we're really trying to drive at here today are
Yes.
those universal principles. Let me say this, Pastor. One of the top two or three limiting factors of your leadership it would be your unwillingness to do what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
If you are unwilling to exit people that need to move on, you severely limit what God can entrust to you.
Yeah.
And so we want to help you with that. We want to help take that cap
Yeah.
off of your leadership. And Jim, that's where I'd like to go today, if that's all right with you. And we got a lot to talk
Let's
about here. We got a lot
let's get in
going
the
on.
deep water. Time to throw us in the deep end of the pool, John.
Yeah. So before you fire somebody, before
Yeah.
you exit a staff member, ask yourself the question. And Jim, you really helped me with this one: is
Mm.
are you sure it's over?
Yeah.
I think there is a percentage of us that are quick to fire. That's
Yeah.
definitely the minority in
Yeah.
the church world,
Yeah.
for sure. But before you accept somebody's resignation or you terminate them, here's some things to consider. Is the staff member just burned out?
Yeah.
And maybe that's why they're operating at a reduced capacity, or they feel like they need to quit just because they're tired, and
Yeah.
and maybe they don't need to be fired. Maybe they need rest.
Yeah.
Maybe they need a
Yeah.
coach
Yeah.
for 3 to 6 months. Uh, Maybe they need a plan to how do I get
Yeah.
back into the game in a
Yeah.
healthy way. So,
Yeah.
that could possibly be what's going on there. Before you let somebody go, uh, and it's a performance issue or a
Mhm.
relational
Yeah.
conflict issue, maybe a performance improvement plan
Yeah.
would be important to try. Now, here's my take on performance improvement plans. I I um I believe they shouldn't be any longer than 30 days.
Okay.
I know some churches that do 90-day
Yeah.
PIPs.
Yeah.
So what I relate to them is, okay, so you're willing to give away a quarter of an entire year.
Gotcha. Right.
I want you to think about that for a minute.
Right.
You're going to know in 30 days, you'll probably know in less than 30 days
Yeah.
whether this improvement process is going to work or not.
Yeah.
So I tend to believe, and I'm not being
It's good,
critical
John.
of churches who do 90 days. Please hear me.
Yeah.
Um, I'm just saying from my vantage point in both the church world and the corporate world, that the 30-day mark is usually when you know.
Yeah,
And sometimes the 90-day PIP is nothing more than kicking the can down the road.
yeah, yeah.
So a PIP might be helpful. You got a thought there, Jim?
Well, yeah, and my thought was there's nothing that says after the 30 days you can't do a second and a third 30-day
There you
one to
go.
continue the improvement. So I like the
That's right.
30-day thing because I understand my change has to be seen immediately. It's not a, well, I'm still mad for the next 3 weeks, but then I'll get around to it the next 3 weeks and then I'll that sort of thing. Like my improvement needs to change today if I'm going to stay here because in 30 days these areas will be reassessed.
That's
And if
right.
and if I want them to be an eight, but they're a five right now, but I'm a six or a seven, that's okay. But we're gonna do another one. So we're gonna do somewhere between 1 and 3 30-day assessments. But I think again, if they don't improve in 30 days, you now have reasonable grounds for a change of staff member.
Yeah. So I
And I
like
like
that
that.
idea. So one more thing under this first point of whether, are you sure it's over is I want to encourage you. Jim, we need to remember that these folks, they are our employees, but we're also their pastor.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
firing situations have to be saturated with care, with consideration.
yeah,
You said this and it really impacted me. You said roles may be replaceable, but people are not expendable.
yeah. Absolutely.
And I
Yeah,
think we do significant harm when we use people up and then discard them.
yeah,
I have no stomach for that. I have no patience for that. I don't want to be that kind of leader. Jim, if you ever see me lead that way, you can rebuke
yeah,
me in front of the
yeah,
entire team. I don't want to
yeah.
be that kind of guy.
It's not in your
So,
nature.
so make sure it's truly over before you decide,
Yeah.
okay, now we have to move into the next phase of this. Any thoughts on that first one,
Yeah,
Jim?
if they're surprised that there's a problem, that means you didn't communicate the problem. I
Mhm.
know people that were just ambushed with being fired. They didn't know. It's like coming home to a note that your spouse has left you. Like I didn't know there was a problem. We never talked about it. So if you feel as a leader a frustration growing, a resentment growing, a coldness towards a staff member growing, and you haven't communicated the reasons why, you're
Yeah.
partially to blame for the issues. So
Yes.
don't think employee employer as much as maybe think parent and child. I don't mean to make the staff member a child, but
Mhm.
if you never told them that not making their bed is irritating to you, if they continue not to make their bed, that's on you. You're the parent. You're the one that has authority. You're the one that's
Right.
leading the ship. You're the captain. You're the colonel. Whatever analogy you want to use. But that thought that correct them if them being late bothers you, and a year later you fire them because they're late all the time, but they never knew it bothered you.
Yes.
Yeah, it obviously doesn't
Right.
bother them, but you didn't teach them that that's not what we do here. So I would
That's
say
right.
that as well, that if you're like, I'm just frustrated, it's time to start over again. We're not breaking up with a girl in junior high school. This is very serious. People will have to sell their homes. People will look at your church and maybe the church differently who are affected by this. You've got to do
That's
your
right.
best to have some courage and address the issues,
E-
in an orderly manner.
Encourage all along the way is
Yeah,
really what I hear you saying.
yeah,
So it's one thing to have courage to let somebody go. It's
yeah,
another thing to have the courage along the way to have the hard
yeah,
conversations
yeah,
with them. Hey,
yeah,
I'm noticing this. Um, hey, you've now gone over the rumble strip of this core
yeah.
value and you're banging
Yeah.
into the guardrail and you're about to go into a ditch.
Yeah.
I
Right.
love you
Right.
enough
Yeah.
that I'm willing to risk being honest with you about that and maybe
Yeah.
upsetting you
Yeah.
in the process.
Yeah.
So yes, and that kind of leads into the next one, and that's
Yeah.
get the facts straight and in writing.
It's good. Yeah.
The last thing you want to do when somebody is being let go is that to turn into a gossip fest
Yeah. Yeah.
in a he said, she said situation. So
Yeah.
during your conversations with this departing staff member, carefully document what is being said and agreed upon.
Hmm.
So important. Communicate this with your board, your elders, and at some point with the remaining staff in an honest and compassionate way. So we've
Yeah.
had to let go, I think, 3 people in 12 years.
Yeah.
And each time, uh, well, the first time there was, well, that's not true. We had a team of three at that time,
Yeah.
and I had to
Yeah.
let somebody go and
Yeah.
had the conversation with them first, but then quickly had the conversation with the other person on our team just so they
Yeah.
knew
Yeah.
what was happening.
Yeah.
And the other two times that we've had to do that, the same process was in place.
Mhm.
You know, because if or when the stories of what really happened come out and people that are going to start sharing their opinions, it's
Yeah.
really good to have a record of who, what, when, and where.
Yeah.
So get it in writing, have it there, have it documented. I don't know if you want to comment on that at all, Jim, but that's the
No,
second piece of
again, yeah, I think what we're talking about is the health of the church, because if there's a place for the devil to put some leverage on, we're responsible to make sure that that place doesn't exist. So in
it.
writing, with understanding, I actually I have it on my desk right now. I have a signed agreement from years ago, but we had an issue before it all blew up. This is what we've agreed to. You're going to sign it. I'm going to sign it. Your spouse is going to sign it. My spouse is going to sign it. Everybody's in agreement now. And the reason it's still on my desk is because if there is something that comes back, I can say, wait, we all agreed to this. Remember, we all agreed to this.
That's
It
right.
was especially an especially messy, almost divorce-like occurrence.
Yeah.
So I took extra precautions to make sure that this couldn't, if it ever did blow back, I could say, no, no, this is what we agreed to. Someone says, well, they said, you
Yes.
said, well, this is what they signed.
No.
This
Here
is
we
what I
go.
signed. But
Right.
I don't stand up on Sunday and say, here's my signed document that tells, this is the narrative. But if there is a problem and people are courageous enough to say, we're leaving the church or we're upset at you because, I say, let me show you what they signed,
That's right.
what I signed, and the process that led up to this. And then you're left to choose whether or not you believe me, whether or not,
That's right.
the other
That's
person,
right.
you want to carry their fence, that's up to you. But I position myself to protect the organization that I serve well.
Yes. And so here's the third piece of exiting staff with grace and
Yeah.
grit, and that's
Yeah.
actually having the difficult conversation.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Jim, there are two hats
Yeah.
that every pastor wears,
Yeah.
whether you like it or not,
Yeah.
whether you're aware of it or not. You wear a leader hat
Yeah.
and you wear a shepherd hat.
Yes.
And some pastors lean more towards the shepherding side
Yeah.
of the equation, some more to the leadership
Yeah.
side of the equation. You have to understand that
Yeah.
because when it comes to letting somebody go, when you're at this stage of having the talk,
Yeah.
that talk needs to be kind but
Yeah.
businesslike.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
It needs to be short.
Yeah.
Here's the outline for that
Okay.
conversation.
Yeah.
Here's what's happening.
Yeah.
Here's why it's happening.
Yeah.
And here's what's next.
Yeah.
And I've been in that situation enough to know that some people will receive that and they won't fight back.
Yeah.
Others will fight back, and it's okay for them to express pain, upset. I'm not saying this that this will make people not angry,
Yeah.
but here's where you get into trouble as a pastor because that shepherd part of you in that moment can create confusion for you if you're
Yeah.
not careful.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when we're firing somebody, we never use terminology like, I'm really sorry about having to do this,
Yeah.
even though I am sorry about having to do it.
Right.
I
Right.
am sorry. I wish I didn't have to, but I don't use that language
Okay.
in this conversation because your shepherd heart can get in the way of you
Yeah.
doing this well.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, it's short. Here's what's happening. Here's why. We've had many talks about this before. Here's why now is we're pulling the trigger on this. And here's what's next for you.
Yeah. And that's a very important part, because at first it's very shocking. And then now what question becomes very prevalent. And
That's
so
right.
but in that conversation immediately, and this is what's next. Go ahead with that one, John. I love that.
Yeah, so here's what's next. Here's what's going to happen. Here's the
Yeah.
timing.
Yeah.
Here is, and we're going to talk about this later, but here's the severance that we're
Yeah.
offering to you,
Yeah.
and we'll detail that in a minute.
Yeah.
Here's the communication that's going to go out. We're going to respect. We're going to do this with as much respect for you as we possibly can.
Yeah.
And so I I have lost count, really, Jim, in the 12 years that we've been doing what we do, how many times a pastor gets into this situation and they're either a bully
Yeah.
or they're a doormat.
Yeah. Hmm.
No, you take off the shepherd hat. And by that I don't mean you're a bully.
Right. Right.
By that I mean you don't allow that shepherd's heart for people
Yeah.
to confuse
Yeah.
the situation.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I wonder what you think about this third one, Jim.
Yeah, it's misplaced compassion, right? I don't want to hurt
There you
you,
go.
therefore I'm going to allow you to hurt the organization that I serve and I lead. You can't do that. So I think that, and this is a terrible analogy, but it works, and that is you have authority. And let's say authority is like a gun, and you're in a
Mhm.
fight with somebody. It's not a fight, but there's this conflict, and they have a knife. The guy with the gun doesn't have to raise his voice. The guy with the gun doesn't have
That's
to be
right.
afraid. The guy with the gun is in complete control and doesn't need to use the emotional gymnastics of raising your voice or threatening or being really, I'm so sorry that I have to do that. Like
Hmm.
it's just you have a delegated authority from the Lord to serve the congregation
That's
as
right.
he would serve it. And so you don't need to employ emotional devices to make you less
100% right.
afraid or less
It's
intimidating.
it's already emotional.
It's already emotional. Yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
add fuel to that fire.
Yeah.
And so if I had that conversation, here's what's happening, here's why,
Here's
and
why.
here's what's next, and they react and they say, well, what about this? What about this person? What about that person? What about
Yeah.
here's what's happening,
Yeah.
here's why,
Yeah.
and here's what's next. I stay with the script.
Yeah.
I go into those meetings, Jim, with something in writing in
Yeah. Oh
case I
yeah.
get a little flustered
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah.
And I've had a couple of times where I had to repeat, here's what's happening, here's why, and here's what's next, three
Yeah.
or four times.
Yeah. Name, rank, and serial number. Ask me all the questions you want. You're getting name, rank, and serial number. Yeah.
That's right. And
Yeah.
after the third or fourth time, they realized
Yeah.
I'm not going to move
Yeah.
John. Um,
Yeah.
and I feel that we don't do that really super well as pastors, but we
Yeah.
need to learn how to do this
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're going to have to remove the hat of pastor for a bit, shepherd, and put the leader hat on
Yeah.
and be a leader in those moments. And you can be a leader without being a bully
Yes.
and without being
Yeah.
cruel.
I say this too, John. If there's been a performance, been a PIP that we talked about,
Yeah,
and it has, this shouldn't be a surprise, this conversation, or if there's been some sort of
100%.
a disqualifying moral failure, this shouldn't be a surprise, right?
That's right.
So, and people who feel powerless, which we would understand someone in the process of being let go feels powerless, they often reach for things that make them feel more powerful, like trying to like, well, guilt on you, well, or false sympathy,
There
or
you go.
puff up and get angry, whatever their default reflex has been through life to get through a hard situation. They may weep, so you feel sorry
That's
for them,
right.
and you want to feel sorry for them, and you do feel sorry for them, but there's only one thing harder than letting them go, and that's not letting them go when either the grace has
Yes.
expired, they it was a wrong hire. Let's say it's 100% your fault. You hired the wrong guy. It's still the
Hmm.
right decision, regardless of how that turns out. And again,
Yep.
remember, the slaves and masters was Ephesians 6 talks about slaves and masters,
Mhm.
but this isn't slaves and masters, but it says, remember that your master has a master too. So you should do compassionately what you have to do, but don't be manipulated by their anger, by their fear,
That's right.
by their sadness. We understand these things. You don't have to yell, you don't have to negotiate. I think that's a big mistake people make at this
That's
time.
right.
Well, what if we did this instead of that? Like, nope, you
Nope.
walk in with your plan and you work that plan, and that's kindness.
Yeah.
Clarity in that moment is kindness to them.
And Jim, so I've said this probably 100 times on this podcast. We're coming up on 6 years that we've been
Yeah.
podcasting together.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure I've said this 100 times that when we do this the right way, that the church wins,
Yeah.
that person wins because
Yeah.
why would I want them to stay in a role they're failing at?
Yeah. How
Why would
hurtful
I
is
do
that?
that? Why would I? That's
Yeah.
not leadership. That's not even good pastoring.
Yeah.
That's just cowardice on my
Yeah.
part.
Yeah.
And so they have the potential of winning. The church will win.
Yeah.
You as a leader will win. Your team will win if you do this well.
Yeah.
If you don't do this well, all those entities lose,
Yeah.
including the person who you allow to stay way beyond when
Yeah.
they should. You are wasting their time.
Yeah.
You're delaying them getting another role where they may flourish, another
Yeah.
environment where they
Yeah.
really may come alive. And that's not pipe dream. I have seen that happen
I
over
have
and
to.
over and over again. And and it's just amazing.
Yeah.
I've had people come back to me and say, John, you firing me was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Yes. Yes.
It
Literally.
was a it was a
Yeah.
wake up call for me.
Yeah.
John, the best thing you did was to fire me. I've landed in a role that's such a better fit for me and I'm flourishing there. You know how happy that makes me for
Right.
them?
Right. Yeah.
And so we
And
spent
remember, they didn't say that the first day. They said that
no,
many days later.
no,
But
they were
right is right.
mad,
Yeah.
upset,
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
So here's the fourth one,
Yeah.
and this goes right along with number three, is never throw mud.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Lovingly cover your staff that you've asked to leave or that have left on their own volition. Now, you've said this, and I'll never forget it.
Mm.
You've just, it's so memorable. You said this, creating a church culture where only evil people leave or are asked to leave is a significant mistake
Yeah. Yeah.
because then they have to make the place they've left more evil.
Yes. Right. Right.
And so attacking the character of staff who have left
Yeah.
is there's so much wrong with that.
Yeah.
Let me just say this. First of all, it's sin.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It is
Let's get
gossip,
right down to the
whining.
bottom of
Yeah.
this. It's sinful behavior.
Yeah. Yeah.
It diminishes you as a
Yeah.
leader. Uh, don't throw mud. You
Yeah.
said this, Jim. Take the high road. So you've influenced me so much on this.
Mm.
Take the high road and give God something to bless
Yeah.
in this. So I'd like you to speak to this fourth one.
Yeah, back to that again. If your church culture is, well, they left the church because they weren't spiritual enough, or well, that sets up the environment where they go and they say, well, we left the church because they were too spiritual.
Mm.
It's so people do come and people do go. There's a great book. I'm trying to think of the name of it. It's something about putting the good and goodbye that you're
Yeah.
quoting that you and I wrote together years ago.
Yes.
It did be a great resource for this. That's still available? You have copies
Yes,
of
it
that?
is. Yes, it
Okay.
is. That's a good thought. I didn't even think about
Yeah.
that. You just go to our website and pick up a copy of that book.
Yeah.
That will really help you
Yeah.
not only with staff that are exiting, but also
Yeah.
will help you process when late people exit
Yeah.
as well. So good.
Where
That's
this
a good thought.
lesson was first rooted in me was my parents were divorced when I was in first grade, so 6 years old. And my father's way of dealing with it was to accuse the character of my mother for the rest of his life. My mother's way of dealing with it was to trying to help me understand how much she loved me, how much she loved her father or my father. Um, but it was exhausted and it was time. She never dishonored my dad. My father never honored my mother. And it was funny when I was a kid, you kind of go, well, you believe what you're told. As you get older, you step back and go, you know what? She's taking the high road. Every time there's a chance to go left or right, she goes the right
Yeah.
way. I respect that. I honor that. And I try to emulate what my mother taught me is when, it was something that's painful, the best thing to do is not make the other person worse, or that it
Yeah.
doesn't help. And if you burn bridges when people leave, remember this, and if you've been pastoring for very long, you know this. People that leave today often come back tomorrow. People that you fire from your staff or you remove from a volunteer position and they're offended and they
Yes.
leave. Often they turn around, come back later. And if you're like, hey, you're a terrible
Yeah.
person, we fired him because he was evil, well, you burn that bridge that God may want them to come back across to bring the whole thing full circle.
That's right. I have a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
And this was in the corporate arena. I had to let go somebody from my team, and he was so upset.
Yeah.
He was so mad. Um, and I handled it with as much firmness and grace as
Yeah.
I could, uh, and didn't diminish, didn't lob bombs at this guy,
Right. Right.
didn't talk about him after he left to other people. And then, wouldn't you know it, that 3 years later, we end up in the same company, and
Mm.
he's actually on my team. Now
Okay.
I have no authority over him in this
Right. But you have
new
to work
role,
together.
but
Yeah.
we had to work together.
Yeah.
And we got along fantastic
Yeah.
because I handled this letting him go in a way that he didn't feel he felt he was mad, but he felt respected in the process.
Yeah.
And so you never know. You're right. You never know that that person, you may be in a new season of your life and you're going to see that person again. Why build walls
Yeah.
that are unnecessary
Right.
that people have to climb
In,
over?
insecure people build walls. People that are afraid build walls. People that are angry build walls. You don't have to be any of those things. Again, with delegated authority, do the right thing the right way for the right reason, and you can answer everybody's questions. And no one needs to yell. No one needs to impugn somebody else's character. No one needs to be
Yeah.
the villain. So you can be the hero or the victim. Just it's okay.
Yep.
Just be right. And be firm and be kind and be calm in the rightness. And that helps everybody. I think if someone was firing me and
I
they're
agree.
screaming at me, it's very different than if someone's firing me with a smile on their face, telling me, what's happened, what's and why it's happened and what's about to happen. It's a kindness, John. I
Yeah.
like what you're saying there.
So we've got a few more here to go. I'm going to
Yeah.
put the accelerator on here.
Okay.
Um, so never throw mud. Here's the next one. Fill in the blanks before your congregation does.
Yeah.
I do think when you announce a significant staff departure from the pulpit, that should be followed up with writing, uh, a
Hmm.
note, a letter to every person in your congregation,
Yeah.
basically reiterating what was said from the platform.
Yes, I
Uh,
agree. Yeah.
and that should be in their mailbox 1 or 2 days after it's been announced.
Yeah.
Um, here's why. When I resigned from the campus pastor role, it was announced
Yeah.
and a letter went out
Yeah.
right afterwards. And like 8 months later, I ran into somebody from one of the other campuses
Yeah.
and they said, "How's it going out there?" And I said, "I
Right.
haven't been the campus pastor for 8 months."
That's
So,
funny. Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, it's really important to be mindful here. Uh,
Yeah.
I think that when you're ready to make this move, your elders should know about it
Absolutely.
uh,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
beforehand. Uh, Jim, you might have some insight on this one. There's a time to tell the staff. I think the
Yeah.
staff should know what's coming. They
Yeah.
shouldn't be caught off guard. Now, I wouldn't give a
Yes.
ton of lead time there.
Yeah. Oh
Like
yeah.
if I'm getting ready to let somebody go, I'm not telling the staff 2 weeks in advance. I'm not going to
No.
do that. I'm going to tell them a couple days in advance.
And this
Here's
is
what
why, right? Because everybody tells one person they trust, who tells one person they trust, who tells one person they trust.
100%
It
right.
it it is out. Yeah, yeah. And this is true of staff. This is true of even like presbyters meetings or even family members. Everybody tells one person they trust. So only the
Yeah,
people that need to be involved need to be involved. And then others who
right.
don't need to be involved until later on, just in an informative way. I'm with you.
That's
I
right.
wouldn't inform them until as late as it's practical for them to be able to
Yes.
process it and ask questions so that when the world
Right.
finds out about it, the congregation finds out about it, they can talk to staff,
Right.
leaders, deacons that have known about it and had a little bit of time to process it, ask any questions they had,
Yeah.
and then that really preserves the health of the environment of the congregation.
I think so. And so in that scenario, when I was resigning, I let Aaron Halavin,
Yeah,
my boss at the time, I let him know about 3 months in advance. I
yeah,
said, look, I'm going to be done by this date. And then he, in turn, went to the board at some later date,
Yeah.
let the board know, and then about 3 days, 4 days before it was publicly announced, I sat with every one of my team leads
Yeah.
and told them, here's what's coming,
Yeah.
here's what's next. And so that kind of flow seemed to work. But fill in the
Yeah.
blanks before your congregation does. Can I just say one more thing here?
Please.
Use integrity when you're communicating the departure.
Okay.
If the staff member was fired, don't say they resigned.
Okay. Right.
Come on,
Yeah.
don't do that. Uh,
Yeah.
you know, if they were fired, don't say, "Well, God moved them on."
Yeah.
I just think it's disingenuous.
Now
Um,
that's for performance. What about immorality? They were
yeah.
fired for
Well,
immorality. Is that the same thing, you think?
that's a good yes. So I had to do that one time with a
Yeah.
staff member. Um, and
Can you give someone the opportunity to resign? The performance was good, but something happened in
yeah,
their character that disqualified them from the position.
such a
And
good question, Jim. This is where this gets a little dicey.
yeah.
And I think it's situational.
Okay.
I remember having to do this one time.
Yeah.
We were not specific with the congregation about
Yeah.
what the issue was. We were specific that it was a moral issue.
Yes.
And
Hmm.
you might want to talk to if you've got legal counsel
Yeah.
or a good HR department, if you're a large church, you're probably going to want to get advice from those folks.
Right. Right.
I would say that. I would say if it is moral in nature, immorality, embezzlement, something like
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
seek, this is what I would say, seek good legal advice from somebody who is well versed in HR to put language together that is um, acceptable,
Okay.
protective of them to some degree, protective to the organization to some degree. Um,
Yeah.
so
Because
that's what I
there's
think.
a marriage behind this, right? So if it's a moral failure, there's a marriage, there's a family um that you're trying not to exacerbate at some point. So I wonder, yeah, we have every right to say and even biblically to warn others, if leaders fall, we're supposed to tell people so that
Mhm.
they can be warned. There's no favoritism here. And at the same time, if the goal is restoration, of a ministry or a marriage at some point. I like what you said, it's case by case, because I do think
I
it's
think
it's
so.
it's a good place not to have concrete rules, because I think one
Yeah.
situation warrants a gentleness and the other one does not. If someone just up and leaves their spouse for another spouse and they lied to you for 10 years, or that kind of thing, like, okay, but if and I won't even speculate on what the other one is, but there are lesser reasons,
Yes.
to be terminated, to make
Right.
sure that there's a gentleness. You don't hurt the chances of a marriage or a family surviving the crisis.
Yeah, and so that might not be a satisfactory answer to your question, Jim,
Yeah.
and to anybody who's listening, but that's the best I can do is that it's
Gotcha.
case by case, get
Yeah.
advice from
Yeah.
people who do this kind of
Yeah.
stuff more for a living.
Yeah.
Let's keep going here. I think when we let somebody go, the people who remain need to be reassured.
Yeah.
One of the first questions in the minds of a staff of the remaining staff is what's going to happen next?
Yeah.
Like, or perhaps the people who that ministry that pastor was leading, that group of people, like, okay, now what's going to happen?
Sure. Yeah.
So I think that it would be important to communicate whatever plan you have, whether it's fully orbed or not,
Yeah.
um, to fill in the gaps created by that staff member's leaving, even if it's temporary,
Yeah.
even if those plans are temporary, and assure people you're committed to taking the proper steps to maintain the effectiveness of that area of ministry.
Yeah.
Um, I'm going to just keep rolling here. Construct a
Please.
kind, thoughtful severance package. This
Yeah.
is really an important consideration in staff departures.
Yeah.
I would consult with your board about what is both fair and kind as
Hmm.
the staff member departs. It could include several weeks
Yeah.
of pay and benefits, or it
Yeah.
could be several months, depending on the scenario. But
Yeah.
again, be specific with the terms of the severance package so that there's no misunderstanding.
Yeah.
Has to be in writing, has to be
Yeah.
signed
Yeah.
by all parties.
Yeah.
Uh, and and we tie severance to that departing staff member and his
Yes.
or her spouse
Yes. Yes.
and family. They're committed to protecting the health of the church.
Yes. Yeah.
Never pay severance in a lump sum.
Never, ever, ever.
Do it
Yeah.
on a regular payroll cycle,
Yeah.
because that gives you a little bit of that gives you some accountability.
And let's say there's not even that, but they're part of that should be, let's say they're a youth pastor. Part of that is you need to now separate from those kids. A new person's going to come in and they need to bond.
Mhm.
And if it's, 6, 8 weeks of severance pay and a new person comes in, that keeps them, lets the dust settle in a good
That's
way.
right.
But yeah, what are you expecting them to do? Whether they're fired for moral reasons or performance reasons, but I expect that I'm not going to hear through social media, through the
Mhm.
grapevine, you, your family members, your kids, because what I can't do is I can't take people's tithe dollars and subsidize the destruction of the church that I'm here to serve. I,
There
I
you go.
just can't. And I can't allow that. So there's a consequence, there's a responsibility. And I'm going to ask you to do that well. If you don't understand this, that when that comes back to me, you will have received the last dollar you'll ever get from this church. I just can't endorse
That's
that.
right.
Yeah.
Yep. And so I've run into churches who have done that very well. And they're
Yeah.
grateful because some of them have had to stop the severance
Yeah.
because there was violation of the
Yeah.
written agreement. Others of them have paid it all in a lump sum to their chagrin.
Yeah.
That person went and did a lot of damage
Yeah.
after the fact. Let me give you two more real quick. I
Yeah.
appreciate all of you for hanging in. I know it's been two really long podcasts.
Yeah.
Um, Consider an exit interview, and I would just say this: exit interviews are not for the faint of heart. Um, if you think you
Yeah.
can emotionally handle it, consider an exit interview because it's possible the data you gather will be a growth area for you
Yeah.
and for the organization. And then that
Yeah.
interview gives the departing person an opportunity to vent to
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
and not to others.
Yeah.
Uh, and then lastly, manage your own heart
Yeah.
here. Manage your
Huge.
heart.
Yeah.
Staff members don't belong to you, they belong to God.
Yeah.
Um, don't beat yourself up over the comings and goings of staff. Now, if their departure happened because of something you did or didn't do, learn what you can,
Yeah.
try to make amends, and move forward. Um, I'm wondering, does the longevity of a staff member reflect our leadership? Perhaps,
Yeah.
does it always? I don't know, because I think it's the healthy posture here, Jim, is when we understand our own contribution to a departure and the staff member owns theirs.
Yeah. Sure.
I think that's healthy, right? So
Absolutely.
this is eight things, I think eight or nine principles we gave you. Um, and the reason we take so much time, because this is complicated stuff.
It's a big deal. Yeah.
A lot easier to hire and fire in the business world.
Yeah.
A lot harder to do it in the church. But just because it's hard doesn't mean God gives you a pass
Right.
on this.
Yeah.
Um, so these steps, these ideas won't eliminate the difficult feelings
Yeah.
with an exit, but I think these have the potential to reduce the amount of blowback,
Yeah.
negative blowback surrounding the exit of a staff member. So, Jim, that's what I have today.
Yeah. And I think too, John, just back to what Converge can do. Sometimes you need a safe place to air out these issues I'm not going to run into this person in the grocery store. You're not going to run into this person in the grocery store. We
Right.
don't know them. We know facts. We listen. We encourage. But it does sometimes take another person to say you're making the right choice, and we'll be praying for you while you do.
Yes.
And to coach you through the process, right? So if
Hmm.
Converge Coaching can help you in this, if you say I've been wanting to do this for 2 years and I haven't pulled the trigger yet, well, why? Maybe you've wasted. I mean, you owe those kids in that youth group a youth pastor that loves them and loves Jesus and is in the right place
That's
at the
right.
right time. And that's true for every ministry, including yours. So if we can help you by listening and then adding a piece of advice or going through this list with you, we'd be more than happy to do that. That's what we love to
That's right.
do, is to help you serve and stay healthy and strong. And if you're just like, I don't have the energy, the whole force is on fire. I can't get rid of this guy. Like, just encouragement is when we give you what we have. We have courage because of experiences, and now we give you our courage. That's encouragement. So we're
Hmm.
here to encourage you to be who God made you to be and to be the leader and the servant that he made you to be. So let us know if we can help you. We'd love to. Convergecoach.com. And John, thanks for this well thought out, really comprehensive. Don't forget the book, Putting the Good in Goodbye. It'd be helpful to you.
Yeah.
And God bless you guys. I know it ain't easy, but there's one thing that's harder, and that's not doing what's right. So
Yes.
go get them. We love you. Praying for you as you continue to lead from alignment.